going on, everybody? Today I've got my 2013 Acura ILX with the 2.4 liter engine out of the Civic Si and the 6-speed manual. I'm on my way to work right now, and I've been thinking about reviewing this car for a few days now and thought this would be a good opportunity to do so. I've had this car for 8 months now. I bought it used off of somebody on Craigslist, and I got a really great price on it, which was part of why I decided to buy this car. But there were other reasons as well. Now, I want to preface this video by saying that I've always been a big fan of Hondas and Acuras. My first car was an '89 Integra, and to be honest, it was a piece of shit. But it was my first car, and I started driving it at 16, and I was proud to be driving a stick shift, and for the price of it, it was okay. It was only about, I think, $1,100 plus a few hundred in repairs, but this was back in the day. And after that, I moved on to a 97 Acura Integra LS, and that was an amazing car. I had the car for 10 years, which is a long time to own any car. But I loved it because of the way that it drove. It wasn't fast by any means. It had 142 horsepower and abysmal pound-feet of torque, not even worth mentioning. But it was an absolutely fun car to drive that was cheap to run and easy to work on. And I had that car up until I got this car. And in that time that I owned the Integra, I had bought a few other cars, which ultimately I decided not to keep, just because I always returned back to the Integra. I had a Subaru 2.5 RS, and then I went to the other end of the spectrum and got a Dodge Neon SRT4. And the Subaru was okay, but it didn't wow me by any means, and it was also not the turbocharged WRX, so it was quite low on power. And overall, I didn't really find all-wheel drive to be that fun for me personally. And the SRT4 was just a bad quality car. It was fast, very fast, but it just didn't have any kind of, I guess, charisma, if you can find that in a car. And so I always return back to the Integra. Now, I've also driven sports cars like Porsche 911s, Porsche Caymans, Camaros, Mustangs. So I do have a variety of experiences driving different cars. And my family's owned Hondas before and Mazdas. And so back last July, I was looking for a car to upgrade from my Integra. A car that would provide me similar joys, but also provide me with modern creature comforts and just overall a newer car that was going to give me peace of mind and was going to be extremely reliable, but also not requiring too much of my time to put towards maintenance. And I looked at a bunch of cars. I looked at the new Honda Civic, the Mazda 3, the Mazda 6, the Honda Accord, the TSX, and it came down to this car or the Mazda 3. Now, ultimately, I chose this car because was cheaper. For the price, I would get more bells and whistles. The Mazda 3 I would have had to probably purchase brand new because I couldn't find any good deals on a used one, as it was only a 2-year-old car at the time. And this car, luckily, I stumbled upon on Craigslist for a very good deal. You know, this car is not in high demand, which surprises me a little bit, but a lot of automotive reviewers have not really shined too brightly on this car. But I think that's taking into account what you pay at the dealership. So this is about a $30,000 car. I paid half of that after 3 years in aging, and it only had 40,000 miles. So I think I got a pretty good deal. Now, getting into driving this car every day and what I like about it and what I don't like about it. I love this car because it's a good experience driving it. Similar to the Integra, I absolutely love Honda engines and Honda transmissions. And both of those components come from the Civic Si of the 9th generation, I believe. And if you guys have ever driven a Honda stick shift with a VTEC engine, then you know how fun it is. Now, I wanted to move on from an Integra because I wanted something a little bit more sophisticated and with a more mature look. And so I really do love the exterior of this car. If you're just looking at pictures, I don't think that you get really the whole how do you say it, ambience of the car. It's when you see this in person, especially in black, which is the color of mine, it does actually look very nice. The way that the lines are and the curves are, somehow the paint reflects off of it in a very elegant, shiny way. And you know, speaking of the lines and the curvatures of the car, I really do think that they made a good-looking car that, yes, it can be on the more conservative side, but in a way it also has its own unique look. So I do like the exterior a lot. And going on to the interior, I also like it. It's got a very attractive looking interior that has all the things, the buttons, the shifter, the steering wheel, all in the right place, and it just feels good. And talking about the interior features, that's also part of what sold me to this car. It's got push button start, it's got heated seats, it's got a good, perhaps not excellent speaker system. It's got power seats, it's got auto dimming rear view mirror, and for this 2.4 liter 6-speed manual model, it's got the premium package, which includes most of those items I just listed, and it also has the leather seats. And honestly, when I bought this car for the price I paid, this was the price that Civic SIs were going for. Civic Civic SIs tend to be beat up on, and they actually may cost more than this car just because Civic SRs are more well known and in higher demand, whereas not many people even know that this car comes in the 2.4 liter with a 6-speed manual. Now I also like that this is a little bit sporty, but is also comfortable. I can take my friends, my family in this car on a day trip, and they would have no complaints about the suspension. So I think that it handles fine for a luxury car, but just keep in mind that this is more on the side of comfort than sportiness. Suspension can be a little bit hard over large bumps, but at the same time, you're also gonna feel body roll in the turns. So it's an interesting dynamic. I wasn't a huge fan of the body roll initially, but as I've gotten more and more used to driving this car, it's actually perfectly fine for me. And you know, now that I'm a little bit older, I appreciate the comfort. Perhaps a little bit more than I used to. The last thing that I love about this car is that it provides good gas mileage. On average, I get 30 miles per gallon, high wind city. I'd say probably 60 to 70% highway. Now, going on to what I don't like about this car, and this will be a few minor things. There's no lumbar in the seat, which is, it dumbfounds me that they would cost cut that way. Interestingly enough, the new Honda Civic doesn't have lumbar either. And honestly, I think that it can make or break the comfort of a seat for some people. Me including, I spent a long time adjusting my seat to the way that I like it, and I had to figure out with some time what worked for me. Coming back, the body roll, you know, the suspension could be sportier, I think. For some reason, the tweeters keep falling out. I don't know why they won't stay in place, but when they kind of come out a little bit, they start vibrating and creating noise in the cabin. And I actually have to go back to the dealership to figure out what's going on with it. Going back to the lines and the curvatures of this car, you know, after a cold night where there ends up being a lot of water on the roof due to the ice melting, in the mornings when I start driving, all that water will just flood down the back of the windshield, and then when I brake, the water flows to the front of the windshield. It's kind of weird. I've never seen another car do this, but it's a little bit annoying when you start driving and all of a sudden there's a whole flood of water in front of you, and it trickles down to the sides of the doors as well. So if you have your windows open, you'll probably get water coming in. Not a huge deal, but kind of a little bit annoying and a weird design, I guess. Another thing that I dislike is playing songs from your iPhone can be a tricky thing to do. now that I am used to how this audio system works, it's fine for me, but a lot of times when I plug in my iPhone and then start playing music, I'll get an error message on the screen, and then I'll have to reboot my phone, and then the process is that I need to start playing the song before I plug it in. So I think that this car is not really optimized for smartphones, and we have to take into consideration that this car was made in 2012, so cell phones have matured quite a lot since then, especially the iPhone and Androids. So to conclude this video, if you're considering buying the ILX with the 2.4 liter 6-speed manual, I'd say this car is right for you if perhaps you're a little bit older. You're past the point where you are gleaming at the WRXs, the FRS, the Golfs. If you want to move on from the Rice Rockets or generally cars that are perhaps more on perhaps targeting more. So to conclude this video, if you're considering purchasing the 2013 ILX with the 2.4 liter and the 6-speed manual, I'd say this car is right for you if you are a little bit older and you want a car that's quick but still sophisticated, and it's got the creature comforts where you can take your friends and family around. I'd say that this car is definitely worth looking into. If I were to trade this car in today, the only one I'd still be considering, well, to be honest, I'd probably be considering a few models. The upcoming new Civic Si, the Mazda 3, and I'd say the Golf GTI as well. Those all kind of fit in a similar bracket as this car, although this car is considered a bit more upscale. To be honest, I do want to mention that if you're looking for a luxury car, I will say that you're not going to feel like you're in a Lexus in this car. You're going to feel like you're in a car that is a step up from a Honda Accord in terms of quality. So I'd look at this car and some of those competitors I just listed, and if you're able to find this car, go for a test drive. It's actually pretty rare to find this. Only about 5% of these cars were made in manual transmission, and I think only about maybe 70,000 cars were sold between 2012 and 2015. At 2016, they took away this model, so there is no more 6-speed manual transmission that's offered. So this car is pretty rare. There's probably only a few thousand of these, if that much. So if you like a rare car, by all means, check this one out. If you guys have any specific questions about this car, feel free to comment and I'll respond, letting you know some of my other experiences with this car. Have a good one, guys.